Welcome back, folks. This is Shane. I just wanted to talk about all of the latest releases from Lumix and also my thoughts on the GH7 and also the G9 Mark II, which are micro four thirds cameras. So I've had my hands on basically every new Lumix camera, the S1R Mark II, the S1 Mark II, and the S1 Mark IIe. And I've kind of discussed this on other videos, but I really feel like the standout for me personally is the GH7. And this isn't to sort of defend a smaller sensor camera or anything. It's the camera with the least amount of compromises. And I think that often goes overlooked anytime someone's thinking about buying a camera. You know, a lot of the ambassadors and the fanboys will only push the latest and greatest thing to their audience because, you know, they may have got one for free, right? I've said that before. It's just not always the case, but a lot of the time us reviewers give things back. Other times people are allowed to keep things. And, you know, after using the S1 Mark II, the S1 Mark IIe, and especially the S1R Mark II, I feel like the GH7 is the most bang for buck camera you can buy, and it's also the least compromised in terms of its overall performance. Because, you know, one of the interesting things I've seen, at least over the last, you know, few releases from Lumix, like the S1R Mark II, was overheating to no end. It would overheat outside on a day like today where I'm wearing a hoodie if I was shooting to the CF Express card. And a lot of people will say, oh, you know, shoot to an SD card or bring an external power source and dummy battery. And it's like, you're working around a problem that shouldn't exist. And for the money, it's just not good enough. I wouldn't buy it myself, and I can't recommend that to my audience unless you're a straight up photographer. You know, I recently went to a Lumix event over in Austin, Texas, and I even had people coming up to me sort of defending the overheating, saying, oh, you can work around it by doing this. It's like, dude, you put a CF Express Type B card or slot in the camera, it should just work. And then it was like, oh, you might not have the right brand. And I found out I do have the right brand and it's still overheated. So there's all of those kind of things that I just can't get behind as someone who wants something that's reliable. You know, even the S1 Mark II, I was able to get that to overheat in the studio shooting to the CF Express B card, which is actually on the approved list. So I'm starting to think more about like, what are the most reliable cameras I could get for my work? And the answer is the S5 Mark II and X and the GH7. And the GH7 has the least amount of compromises out of all of them and the most amount of features. Now, you could argue that the S1 Mark II will give you the full frame look, better low light performance and all that kind of stuff. I absolutely get that. And it's not going to overheat much. It's not like it's going to overheat all the time, but I was able to get it to overheat. And if you're powering the camera using a HDMI port and all that kind of stuff, it increases the thermal issues within most cameras. But the GH7 is the only one that I can let run from the latest releases of cameras where you don't have any issues with it, which is why I take it out with me. You know, a lot of Americans seem to think that, you know, 72 degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit, I should say, is hot. It absolutely isn't. It gets up to 100 where I live in summer. And the GH7 just runs and runs and runs, whereas most of the other cameras from other brands and all that kind of stuff will overheat in those kind of scenarios. So yeah, our UV here is crazy. You go outside for 15 minutes, you get cooked in summer. There's just no way around it. So yeah, it's one of those kind of things that a lot of people don't seem to, they think their use case scenario is the only use case scenario. And if you're in a situation where you can work either around that or it's not as hot where you live in certain parts of the year, then you're going to be fine. But the GH7 is kind of like the most fun I've had shooting in a long time because I've got small, lightweight lenses like this 12 to 35. I can punch right in like this and just get this to work for content. You know, the blurry background thing, man, I really felt like, especially over the last 2 years, it's so annoying to watch all of the time. I like a bit of blurry background in the studio. It kind of helps keep focus on the subject, but when you're outside, it's kind of nice to be able to see a little bit about what's going on behind you. At the end of the day, if you can frame your shots properly and you've got good content, it doesn't matter what camera you're shooting with. You know, I would argue if you're happy shooting manual focus, the GH5 is the only camera that you need. You know, I had a GH5, I had a GH5S and GH6, and they're all great. They are really all great. The GH6 is still an absolute beast of a camera. It's a shame, you know, it's been officially discontinued and it doesn't look like it'll be getting any more firmware updates, unfortunately. But yeah, it doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, you've got tools that work for you. What I can say personally is I don't miss depth from defocus, autofocus. You know, having a rig that I can use with autofocus and I can hold things up and it will do the transition, all that kind of thing, really makes my life easy as someone who spends a lot of time talking to a camera either in a room or outside. But it's funny, you know, like Now I've gone back to a manual focus lens, because in the studio, that is, because I love the look of it. It looks better than the Lumix S-Series prime lens I've been using for a long time. So I got a Sirui 35mm t1.4 lens in the studio on manual focus, and man, it looks so good. It looks unreal. And I was just thinking to myself, man, I wish I kind of found that lens earlier, because I could have stuck with a couple of my older cameras and got very similar results at the end of the day. But you got to find the thing that works for you, and what's been working for me to no end is this GH7. I've absolutely loved using it. You know, for a project coming up, I'm actually considering maybe offloading a couple of cameras and getting a second one. I just purchased the DMW XLR2 adapter today. I paid for it myself from Amazon. It was on sale. I could import it from Japan with a 9-day wait for like $300-400 cheaper than I could get it in Australia. So I was like, I'll just buy that, click, and it was $20 more than the old one, new here. So I thought that's pretty great. So I'm gonna have 32-bit audio via that XLR adapter. I got a few plans of things I want to do locally here, including a documentary, and then potentially either this year or sometime early next year, I want to go overseas again and shoot a series of shows over there. So yeah, I'm thinking maybe the Micro Four Thirds thing will be the way to go. Anytime you buy a camera or you're thinking about getting it, it's all about trade-offs. None of them are perfect, but the GH7 is about as close as it's going to get for me personally. I love the form factor. It's got the tally lights. It's priced at a particular price point that is still kind of expensive when you're talking about Micro Four Thirds, but it gives you so much more than a lot of the other cameras. I prefer using this over my old Sony FX3 because I can use it handheld and I don't have to do anything to it in post-production. Sure, the low light performance won't be as good, but that's the trade-off I made. And just the overall form factor and reliability of these cameras are great. And I also love the fact that the lenses aren't super expensive and they're very versatile. Again, 12-35 here, I can punch right in and get a great look, or use it on the wide end, or bring a small prime with me that weighs next to nothing. And these are things that I'm starting to think about. At the end of the day, the message has got to be good, whether you're shooting a short film or you're making a YouTube video. And if it's not, people won't watch. It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter what lens you're using. It doesn't matter if your favorite creator's using the most expensive brand new camera that they were gifted, or whatever the case may be, right? You've just got to make the right decision for you. And I would argue that being honest to yourself, being honest to your audience is better than worrying too much about the details about, you know, which camera you're shooting with, you know, and all that kind of stuff. It's just, it doesn't matter. You can shoot with your phone if you need to, you know, like Rock, one of the guys I watch on YouTube, Rock Wilk. He made a feature film shooting on an iPhone, and 28 years later, I think, was shot on an iPhone recently as well. I haven't seen that yet, but yeah, it's interesting to sort of, you know, come to the realization that Micro Four Thirds is fine. You know, the lens selection's great. The anamorphic lenses, the cine lenses. I got so many great lenses for this particular system, and some that are just so practical, you know. The 24-70 full frame lens is like this big. The Micro Four Thirds one is nice and small. So these are kind of things that I'm thinking about now. It's more about like, what would make my life the most easy and what will give me great results without having to really think too much about it. And the answer is the GH7. There's no compromises with this. There's no crops in any other modes, I don't think, than where you start with the Micro Four Thirds sensor. There's no overheating. My CF Express B card works in this camera. It's just a real pleasure to use, and I think it's making me want to create more, which is, you know, part of what the S9 does for me as well. I love the S9 because it's kind of like an underdog camera. I've always liked underdog cameras as someone who's made content and done stuff on the side as well. And yeah, underdog camera, it's like that feeling of creating something where you've got to put in a little bit of work. That kind of appeals to me. And the GH7, while it does everything really well, you know, to get the same sort of look you might find on a larger sensor camera, you got to kind of think about it a little bit more and use the right tools for the job. And yeah, I love using it. I think it's a really underrated camera. I can't wait to test out that DMW XLR2 adapter. It's something that I can't wait to get in my possession. Finally, I've held off buying it for a long time, but I was like, man, it came up at the right price. So I was like, done. So in terms of about like what I might sell, I don't know yet. I'm almost considering selling a guitar and getting another GH7. It'd be basically a clean swap, which would make a lot of sense. I've got a guitar, it's a Gibson. I don't use it much. I wanted to love it, but I don't love it. So I'll probably flip that, get another GH7 and take a pair of these overseas with me and also when we do the documentary. So that might be the way to go. Just keep it simple. 2 12-35s and a wide angle prime lens. Done. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the GH7. I still think this is completely underrated. You know, you see mixed reviews of the GH7 out there, but I think it comes from experience. Like you either understand, you know, the autofocus system or you don't. And, you know, the autofocus system on this is every bit as good as any of my Sony cameras, minus the tap to track feature, which Sony really does well. And yeah, I'd just prefer, if someone said, hey, you got to keep the ZV-E1 or the GH7, I'd be like the GH7 every day of the week. It's just a much better camera overall. So yeah, much better camera overall for me, might be completely different for you. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.